It's loud. It crashes.
He got blasted with a straight right.
Wood meets bone. Steel meets ice.
Down the middle. Takes a hit from Pionk. He goes old school on with Arnold.
You see men in heavy armor, faces hidden behind masks. They're chasing a small black puck, a piece of hard rubber. Today we call this ice hockey, a game, a sport, entertainment. But imagine you rewind. 100 years, 200, the same movement, the same hit, only without a mask, without rules, without medics on the sidelines. Back then, this wasn't a game. It was a legal street fight with weapons, and sometimes it ended in death. Welcome to the dark history of ice hockey. In the modern arena, everything looks controlled. Penalties, referees, giant ads everywhere. But the roots of this sport lie in something far more archaic, in humanity's ancient urge to test itself in combat and to see blood. Long before the acronym NHL ever existed, on the east coast of what is now Canada, the Mi'kmaq people played a game called Alkamadijik. It wasn't just a pastime, it was training, for the body and for the spirit. Sticks curved like claws, a frozen surface that punished every fall, and a ball that flew low and fast. Some historians believe that the very first mass-produced hockey sticks, used by white settlers in the 19th century, were crafted by Mi'kmaq carvers. The original shape of the hockey stick, that iconic curve, may well have indigenous fingerprints all over it. But when the sport was civilized and commercialized, the Mi'kmaq story was pushed into the background. Their role as creators turned in the public eye, into that of anonymous laborers, people who made the sticks, but rarely got to hold them under bright arena lights. The game that had once been a ritual, a link between people, land, and spirits, became entertainment for paying crowds, owned and controlled by others. Among indigenous peoples of North America and in the icy regions of Europe, people played games where they chased a ball or a piece of wood with sticks. Only those sticks weren't just sporting equipment. They were clubs. In logging towns and mining camps, hockey became the winter release valve for men, who spent their days surrounded by steel, stone, and danger. Lumberjacks laced up their skates after 12-hour shifts, their bodies already covered in bruises, and then crashed into each other on rough, uneven ice. These weren't country club athletes. They were workers with calloused hands and very little to lose. Fights on the ice were an extension of fights in the bunkhouse. Grudges that began over money, women, or insults were settled with sticks and fists on frozen rivers. Sometimes, when the game ended, men didn't shake hands at center ice. They had to be dragged apart, and in a world without cameras or reporters, nobody really knows how many of these games ended in permanent injuries or silent burials. On frozen lakes, far from any settlement, there were no medics, no helmets, no cameras. When someone went down, it could mean three things: a broken nose, a fractured skull, or a grave in the snow. When European settlers came to North America, they brought their own brutal stick games with them. Shinty from Scotland, hurling from Ireland, bandy from Scandinavia. All variations of the same principle: run, swing, hit, and if needed, hit the opponent too. In early indoor games in the 19th century, that violence escalated regularly. One of the first documented indoor hockey games in 1875 in Montreal didn't just end with a final score, it ended in a mass brawl between players and spectators. The game ended not with a handshake, but with shins and heads being smashed, benches being broken. From the beginning, the violence was not an accident. It was a feature. The sport was still young, but its reputation was already clear. This isn't just playing, this is fighting. Newspaper reports from the early 1900s read like police files. In 1904, several players die in a single season, from stick attacks and brawls on the ice. 4 deaths from a game. In one case, a player is beaten with a stick until he lies lifeless on the ice. The press compares hockey to cockfighting and calls for this sport to be banned. In 1905, Alcide Lauren dies, after being struck in the face with a stick during a game. He falls to the ice and never gets up again. The offenders? Often they receive only mild punishments. After all, it's just sport. In 1907, Owen "Bud" McCourt is attacked by several players at once. The assault is so brutal that he dies shortly afterward from his injuries. Courts and leagues struggle to draw a clear line between hard play and manslaughter on ice. The first documented fistfight in a hockey game dates back to 1890. What today can feel like a calculated show was then a raw, uncontrolled outlet for frustration, alcohol, and a culture of hypermasculinity. The crowd loved it. The arenas were cold, but the air was charged, often with plenty of alcohol in everyone's blood. The harder the checks, the wilder the brawls, the louder the roar of the fans. People didn't just come to see goals, they came to see violence, live and uncensored. Leagues didn't respond with tougher penalties. In 1922, the NHL introduced a specific rule. Fighting was officially allowed for a 5-minute major. Pure violence turned into a feature. Hockey now sold itself as boxing on skates. Over time, teams created a new role, the enforcer. Players who weren't there for their finesse, but for their willingness to hit. They were the guardian angels, or executioners, of their stars. If someone cheap-shotted the playmaker, the enforcer stepped in. His job was simple: payback. Many of these goons paid a heavy price. Broken noses, smashed teeth, countless concussions. Some woke up in the morning and didn't know which city they had played in the night before. Years later, doctors would find signs of CTE in many former enforcers, a degenerative brain disease linked to repeated blows to the head, depression, aggression, memory loss, from beloved fan favorites to tragic figures in the shadows of the sport. For decades, leagues and owners could still claim that brutality was part of the show, but that it rarely crossed the invisible line into true catastrophe. Then, on January 13, 1968, that illusion shattered. Bill Masterton, a forward for the Minnesota North Stars, charged into the offensive zone, collided with 2 defenders, and fell backwards. He wasn't wearing a helmet. His head hit the ice with a sound that teammates would later say they could never forget. He never regained consciousness. 30 hours later, Bill Masterton became the first, and still only, player to die directly from an in-game injury in the NHL. The arena that usually shook with noise suddenly felt like a cathedral. Players looked around and realized that this wasn't just about bruises, lost teeth, or broken noses. This rink, this bright, beautiful stage, could also be a place where a life ended, in front of thousands of witnesses. Yet even after Masterton's death, helmets remained optional for years. Tradition, image, and macho pride were stronger than the lessons written in blood on the ice. Goalies aren't just heroes in this story, they're victims too. For decades, they faced pucks with bare faces, no mask, no visor. The puck, a hard piece of rubber that can fly at over 90 miles an hour, slammed into cheekbones, noses, eyes. On November 1st, 1959, goaltender Jacques Plante took a shot to the face. His nose shattered, blood spilled onto the ice. He left the rink and returned wearing a mask. His coach hated it, worried it would block his vision. But Plante refused to play without it. What started as an emergency fix became the symbol of a new era. Over time, the goalie mask itself changed from a simple piece of protection into a kind of horror icon. Early masks were plain, almost expressionless. White shells with black holes where the eyes should be. Seen under the harsh arena lights, they made goalies look less like human beings and more like faceless executioners, guarding a steel cage. That image leaked into popular culture. The blank, inhuman goalie mask became the face of movie killers like Jason Voorhees, a symbol of unstoppable, silent violence. On the ice, artists started painting masks with fanged mouths, skulls, and demonic eyes. It was psychological warfare, a reminder to shooters that the last thing standing between them and the net was not just a person, but something that looked built for nightmares. For the goalies behind those masks, though, it was still just one more layer. Between their skull and a flying piece of rubber, a thin shell, between survival and another trip to the hospital. Even so, it took years before goalie masks became standard, and even longer before anyone truly committed to helmets for skaters. And yet, even with better equipment, violence remained one of hockey's trademarks. In the 1970s, the Broad Street Bullies of the Philadelphia Flyers shocked the league. Their plan was simple. If you couldn't outskill your opponent, you intimidated him. They won Stanley Cups with a system built on heavy checking, penalties, and psychological warfare. Hockey became a blend of technique, tactics, and calculated brutality. No one embodied that era more than Dave "the Hammer" Schultz. Schultz alone racked up more than 3,800 penalty minutes in his career, the equivalent of spending over 60 full games sitting in the penalty box. Every punch he threw, every brawl he started, was both a tactical weapon and a marketing tool. The message to opponents was simple: score on us if you can, but you will pay a physical price. Meanwhile, on the international stage, hockey became a proxy battlefield for Cold War tensions. In the 1972 Summit Series between Canada and the Soviet Union, the violence turned almost surgical. At one point, Canadian forward Bobby Clarke swung his stick and broke the ankle of Soviet star Valery Kharlamov, one of the most gifted players on the planet. It was a deliberate act aimed at neutralizing a threat not with skill, but with pain. The series was celebrated at home as a triumph of national pride, but beneath the flags and anthems was a quieter truth. Sometimes winning meant intentionally destroying a rival's body. Attendance climbed. Television loved the images: flying fists, bloody faces, screaming fans. The message was clear: violence sells. Sometimes, though, the mask slipped. In 1955, superstar Maurice "Rocket" Richard struck an opponent over the head with his stick and then attacked a linesman. The league suspended him for the rest of the season and set off riots in Montreal. Cars burned, shop windows shattered, police clashed with fans in the streets. A single incident on the ice unleashed the anger of an entire city. By now, the sport was far more than a game. It was a stage for frustration, identity, national pride, and sometimes hate. Today, the arenas look cleaner. The gear is better, the rules tighter. Concussions are at least officially taken seriously. But if you look closely, you can still see the old DNA of this sport. The roar when two players drop the gloves, the clicking of cameras, the shriek of the crowd when blood hits the ice. In every check, in every fight, there's a story, older than the NHL itself. A story of men on ice, of sticks that are both weapon and tool, and of a boundary between sport and violence. That remains blurred to this day. Ice hockey presents itself as a modern, dynamic pro sport, but beneath the polished surface lies a dark legacy: deadly games, unpunished assaults, ruined bodies and broken minds. And in the end, one uncomfortable question remains: do we love this sport for its speed, its skill, its drama, or also for something else? For that moment when we forget we're watching real people hurting each other. If this journey into the dark history of ice hockey drew you in, don't forget to check out the other chapters of dark sports history. Because one thing is certain: behind every cheer, behind every trophy, there's usually a past, far bloodier than we'd like to admit.